Hey guys, what's going on? I can't even start this with a straight face. This is a tier list that will age incredibly well. I imagine 30 years in the future, when everybody looks back on this tier list, they will look back on this tier list and be like, my God, that guy was right about everything on that tier list. It has all come true. So I did this this is my first jokey tier list. And it's fun. It was because of a couple of different things. And if you haven't figured out what this is, I'll give you this story to figure out what this is. This spawned, the idea for this tier list came because of a couple of different things. One, the Rush Royale Tips and Tricks, Bear, he did a tier list recently about his top meta cards. And at the beginning of his video, he said, this is just my opinion. You can have a different opinion, but this is just my opinion, right? And I feel like that's the thing that you have to say during a tier list, because you're inevitably going to get people in the comments that are like, like you're wrong, right? But then, and that's just like, I feel like that's a safety thing to say, but at a certain point, it also just becomes fact, right? Because he spent like the entire video, or not the entire video, he spent the Bard portion of the video talking about how he hates Bard, he doesn't like Bard, he doesn't want to play Bard, he doesn't want to use Bard, and it's number 1 on the tier list. And I was like, if this was truly your opinion, right, you would put this at the bottom of the tier list. Like, this wouldn't even be on your tier list of the top meta cards. But it's not really opinion, because you know that Bard is the best, right? An opinion is more like a feeling, like not rooted in anything, right? And so like there was that, and then there was the idea that in 26.0 we are getting Archer and Sentry talents, and literally every single time any post comes out where they are releasing new talents, they are giving talents to something, everybody in every single post, whenever they do any post on any page, Discord, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, there will always inevitably be somebody that's like, yeah, but what about these talents? Yeah, but what about these talents? And it always feels to me like, why don't you just be happy that we're getting talents for these cards, right? And it doesn't matter one end of the spectrum or the other. If they're giving talents to legendaries, then they're accused of being pay to win. You only care about giving talents to legendaries. Why don't you give talents to things that are for free to play players, right? And then when they give talents to Archer and Sentry, the comments become, nobody uses those cards. Those aren't going to be meta. Why don't you give talents to Trapper and Clock? Those cards need talents more than an Archer and a Sentry that I'm not going to use, right? And so like they can't win. And this happens literally every single patch where they give cards talents. And I'm just like, why don't you just be happy that they're giving talents to things? Just like inevitably they will eventually give talents to everything. Like, because then that's the other comment. Oh, how come you don't give talents to Corsair? How come you don't get Demon Hunter was the big complaint forever. And it was just like, how come you're not giving talents to Demon Hunter? And they finally give talents to Demon Hunter. How come you're not giving talents to, X, Y, and Z, right? And it's always just more, and more, right? And so I wanted to take those two kind of concepts. The concept of this is just my opinion tier list, but it's not really opinion, it's kind of rooted in fact, right? A tier list is rooted in fact. There is factual information as to why you would say one card is better than another card. There is factual information that you can say that Bard is better than Boreas, right? There is, that's not an opinion. Like, you saying that Bard is better than Boreas, that's not an opinion. At a certain point, that is a fact, right? And I wanted to take like that idea of us as YouTube content creators always saying, oh, you know, this is just my opinion. Don't at me in the comments. You know, like you can have your own opinion. If you think Boreas is fine and Boreas is the top card, you know, you can think that, right? That feels like a safety net that we just decide to say. I wanted to take what is actually on a this is just my opinion kind of tier list. Because that's what this literally is. This is literally my own feelings, and I have zero facts to back any of this up. And I wanted to take the idea that these cards are the last of the cards to not have talents. And I wanted to rank them into a tier list. And so I'm pretty sure I've kept this on the page for enough an amount of time. So I'm going to get into my tier list all the way at the top at S+ tier. The only reason, you know what's funny is I actually started at S+++ tier, but then I had to make an S++ tier, and then an S++ tier, and then an S+ tier, and then an S tier. And it was just making my tier list look wacky. And I think that 2 gets the point across. I was gonna have like and at the very top, at the very top of the tier list is Portal Keeper. That's the only thing that I care about. I don't care about anything else. I wish I could be like the Steven Stanton 8554 of like everybody asking for something. This is what I would be asking for. I would just complain on every post being like, when are you going to give Portal Keeper talents? I need to use my Bloomin' Dash Blade Dancer, and Bloomin' Dash Blade Dancer is ruined. It's ruined because you don't give the Portal Keeper talents. And that's all I care about. I just care about the Portal Keeper. Give it the Santa talent. Every single time I ever do a stream, there is somebody inevitably that asks me what's my favorite card or what's my favorite deck. And my favorite deck is Blooming Dash Blade Dancer, but I can't play it because Portal Keeper doesn't have talents. I can't play it for a lot of reasons, like it's not great, and it's you're being forced to use Portal Keeper. You can try Flicker, it's not better, but like you're being forced to use Portal Keeper. And because Portal Keeper doesn't have any talents and it's just a base nothing unit, you're essentially giving yourself a handicap, and it's already not a great deck in and of itself. And you should just play, at this point, because you're able to run Floral Frenzy with Scrapper. Scrapper is just infinitely better than trying to Dryad your way to the top with a Blooming Dash Blade Dancer deck. And the only thing that ever changed this entire concept was the holiday event, the Christmas event, where they came out with the Portal Keeper, with the Santa Portal Keeper. You can backtrace my videos to the Santa Portal Keeper talents, where it became it gave it a talent that was you can move anything of its rank or lower, which meant that every time one of your Blade Dancers was going to get hit with the Scrapper hit, because you then had the ability to run Scrapper, when your thing was going to get hit with the Scrapper hit, you could switch in a Portal Keeper. The Portal Keeper would level up, and inevitably you would have a level 7 Portal Keeper that could literally move anything on your field the entire game. It was beautiful. It was amazing, and it was great, and it was the best time I've ever had playing this game. Number 1 with a bullet is Portal Keeper. And like that's all I want. I don't even care about if that's the max talent. I don't even care what the other 3 talents are. The other 3 talents at that point are just bonuses. I just want Portal Keeper to have the Santa talent. That's all I want in this game. Nothing in S tier. It's just Portal Keeper all the way at the top. Just Portal Keeper all the way at the top of the list. Next tier down is A tier. I really want Trapper to get talents. I think Trapper is just one of those meta cards that's in every deck, and I'm really excited to see what they do to it. They're probably going to buff and nerf it in some kind of way. Like, maybe it throws traps, maybe it throws like different kinds of traps. That would be kind of be cool. Like, maybe you have a slow trap or a defense reduction trap. I feel like that's how they would do the two sides. Or because it traps, it's a trapper, it traps animals. I think that would be cool if you could throw nets at your opponent. So maybe it keeps both the slow and the defense reduction, or you can throw nets at your opponent and stun opponents. I think that would also be cool. So you could have like Toxic Trapper. There's just so many kinds of ways that they could go with it. And it would be just very interesting to see like the full version of a defense reduction slow, or like a toxic version of Trapper where he throws traps at your opponent. Maybe like stunning monsters or slowing their attack speed, or reducing damage, or I don't know, some kind of like negative effect. I think that would be cool. But yeah, like I think that Trapper would be really cool. I like Trapper talents. I would upgrade my Trapper right now to 15 if they gave it Trapper, if they announced for 26.0 Trapper talents. It's one of the last legendaries, and that seems like very exciting. Chemist for the exact same reason. I think that Chemist is still good right now, even though they've nerfed it, and even though it only literally does the one thing of defense reduction, and they've nerfed the defense reduction. Do you have any idea how insane that is? How good a card needs to be at rare level for them to nerf the only thing it does? At rare level, that would be like if Sentry was too good and they nerfed the damage. like Chemist only does the one thing and it got nerfed. I can't even imagine what this would look like with talents. Like the defense reduction, if it even got stacks and was able to like, I don't know, be kind of like an alchemist, or if it could work in an alchemist deck. Like the fact that alchemist and chemist have such similar names, it feels like they should be in a deck together. I don't know, like it sounds like it would be interesting. Bombardier, I know that everybody thinks that a max talent Bombardier would give the same talent that it had before. That wasn't a talent, but it was kind of a talent. It was an unsaid thing, because Bombardier, the only thing Bombardier needed to do was just stun units. And the fact that they allowed it to stun boss abilities was just an extra added bonus that did feel like a talent pre-talents. Before talents were even introduced in the game, that felt like a talent. It felt like an additional thing that it shouldn't do, because all it should do is just stun things. And that's what made it so good, and that's why they took it away. People were deciding to run Bombardier over a max level Banshee because not a lot of people had max level Banshees. And then they realized, like, if we just take this away, nobody will use it anymore, and it'll feel like a common card that does nothing. I don't think that they would ever give that back to Bombardier. I think they're fine with stunning boss abilities being on a max level Banshee or a merge out on a Frost. I think those two are safe for that kind of ability. That's too strong of an ability. And I don't think that they would actually change Bombardier and give it that talent back. But I am interested into seeing like what kind of other things you could do with a unit that stuns. I think that this is the better version of a Stasis, but I guess we'll talk about Stasis whenever we get there. Hex, I'm also very interested in how they could maximize Hex. I think that it feels like a card that they would also have to fundamentally change, kind of like Grindstone, because originally Grindstone increased your crit chance, and that's all it did. But then it was redundant because Night Statue has crit chance and attack speed, so it just felt like a bad Night Statue. And so then they just fundamentally changed the entire unit and the way that it worked. I feel like that's what they would do with Hex. And even though Hex I regard as like the worst card in this game right now, I think that it, as a legendary, if it got talents and if it like completely revamped if they revamped how it works and how it functions, I think that it could be really interesting. I don't know what they could do to balance it out, but it being a legendary card and it being as bad as it is, I would like for them to like completely revamp the entire card from top to bottom and then give it talents. And I think that it could be really good. Earth Elemental, I think that Earth Elemental, I specifically have this high because of the Banshee deck. For no other reason but because of the Banshee deck. Remember when I was just talking about how they nerfed Chemist? Because it only does the one thing, and it's a rare card, and they nerfed it. Earth Elemental is an epic card that is being used in the Banshee deck so that the Banshee DPS deck can function, and it's never been nerfed, and it is a base card with no talents. Banshee DPS does ridiculous damage. If I were to restart my game and invest into one unit, it would be Banshee. And the fact that that deck can run a epic card that has no talents, and that's basically why it's doing as much damage as it is, if that card got talents, no matter what they are, like, Earth Elemental would shake up the meta. If it got talents, they would have to take a good hard look at Banshee again, and like see what that interaction is between an Earth Elemental and a Banshee, because you can't make it too strong so that a poison deck can, like, you know, like, you're not buffing Earth Elemental so that Poison or an Ivy and Plague Doctor can become better. You're buffing an Earth Elemental, and you have to realize that people are going to use it in a Banshee deck. And Banshee, as of right now, it's already doing insane damage. And if you buff Earth Elemental in any way with talents, with 3 talents and a max talent, and you put that in a Banshee, I can't even imagine. I'm just so excited trying to imagine what that future looks like. And that's why it's this high. Gargoyle was one of those cards that I've always really liked. I remember when Witch first came out, and I was using a I was using a Gargoyle deck to beat the meta. Everybody was using Witch and just bad decks. Because anytime a Witch cursed one of your units, you basically lost immediately. It was when it first came out, and it was healing monsters for way too much. My tech against it was Gargoyle. Every time it hit the center Gargoyle, it did nothing, and then I just kept I just matched my Portal Keeper with the surrounding Gargoyle merge ranks. So like if I merge ranked up all of my Gargoyles to 3, I would just merge up a Portal Keeper to 3, and then I had free protection for my entire field for the entire game. And that's how I was beating that meta. When they revamped Gargoyle to make it to where you either get a Gargoyle statue or a regular Gargoyle, I thought that was a really cool change. I think that Gargoyle has so much potential. It's like a bad cultist. It's like a beginner version of a cultist deck. And I think it's cool. I think it has, because of the 2 functions that it has, like a stone gargoyle or a attacking gargoyle, I think that if you gave it talents, it could have so many cool applications. And so many cool, like, different ways that you can go about using that kind of deck. Pyrotechnic, I think that it's such a funny card. There was an idea that I had a long time ago, and it was to build a Pyrotechnic Night Statue Covenant of Veteran deck, because Pyrotechnic only works on odd numbers. You have to have an odd number of Pyrotechnics on the field for it to activate. But then for Night Statues, you have to have an even number of Night Statues. And I thought it was so funny that you have to have these specific numbers on both units. And that it's just such a funny mechanic. I think that if they gave it talents, it could become, like, really cool. Like, maybe they could do it to where if you have, like, an odd number out, it does one thing, and then if you have an even number out, it does a different thing. and you can run it on like 2 separate sides of the talent tree. So like maybe you could have an even number of pyrotechnics, and it does like really strong, X kind of, or this kind of damage. And then if you have the odd talent tree, then it does like that kind of crazy damage. I don't know. I think it could be like really cool. Or maybe like one side, like if you have an odd number, it buffs your side. You can use it as like a support unit. I think that would be cool. And then if you have it on the even side of the talent tree, it's the damage side. I don't know. I think that would be like they could do a lot of interesting things with that. Mime and Clown, I kind of have paired together. Mime is a card that's being used in like every like merge out toxic deck. I don't think it wouldn't have toxic talents, but I'm just so interested because it only does the one thing where it just has the ability to merge out equivalent units. I don't even know what it would do. Like, it's just such an interesting type card. Like, I don't even know. I can't even imagine what kind of talents it could potentially have. In the same way that I don't know what Clown could potentially have. I was making the joke when they gave Harlequin talents that they're actually secretly Clown talents, and it was just an April Fool's joke because the talents were so bad that these talents are just epic talents, right? It's just Clown, because Clown is the copy of Harlequin, and these are just bad talents, right? They're just Clown talents. And no, those Harlequin talents are actually Harlequin talents. But so I don't know what they could do with Clown. Maybe it's just like, wouldn't that be funny if it was just all of Harlequin's talents, but even worse? It was just like every single talent that Harlequin has, but just the worst version of the bad talents that the Harlequin talents are. I think that would be funny. And then like my last one for the A tier that I'm really excited for is Executioner. Executioner being a percentage damage damage deck, or a percentage damage unit. They've done away with a lot of percentage damage. There was a point in time when Corsair, Meteor, Minotaur decks were like ruling the world. And when that was happening, they like hard nerfed all of it. They hard nerfed the Corsair to just do regular damage, and Meteor Minotaur decks do not do as much damage as they used to because they nerfed the percentages of the chance of you getting the orb, and they nerfed the percentage of that. So then to be able to do percentage damage, it became even harder for those decks. And so I don't know what they would do with Executioner. I think that it's a cool unit. The idea that it executes things that are below a specific percentage. You would obviously add talents to support that idea that it could insta-kill things. And I don't know what you could do, but it just sounds like such a fun unit. Like if there was like an Executioner DPS deck, where it was just like a bunch of Executioners that dealt damage, and then when it got to a specific level, they would execute them. And maybe if you got like a stack where it dealt more damage every time you executed a unit, I think that would be. I don't know. It just sounds like it kind of reminds me of like Reaper, and how they made Reaper. That was just an insta-kill unit, and now you can do like Reaper DPS. It feels like Executioner could be like a really cool DPS card. In my next tier down, it's my B tier. This is Banner. I think that Banner needs like a complete rework, again, like Hex, like Grindstone. The idea that that the only thing that it does is attack speed, I think that needs a complete rework, because if you want to run something for attack speed, you would just run Night Statue. I know that if you wanted to run Enchant Sword, then you wouldn't be able to run Night Statue, and so that's why that deck kind of exists. But I feel like even people that run Enchant Sword, they don't run Banner. They'd rather run like Trapper and Witch or Banshee. There's just so many more support cards that do so much more for you than just give you attack speed. then attack speed is just not that important of a thing anymore. And I feel like they would just completely revamp Banner, and make it kind of like a grindstone. And I don't know what that would look like, but it sounds like it would be pretty cool. Stasis being a legendary unit, I feel like I should have had this higher, like with a Bombardier. But it's just that I think I have more hype for a Bombardier getting talents and trying to see if it has the same, if they're going to give it the stun talent back, than I do knowing that the better stun should be Stasis. That was the other thing. It was that people were running Bombardier over Stasis because Bombardier stuns more effectively. It efficiently stuns the front of the gate because it's constantly attacking the first unit, whereas Stasis is like Trapper and it just throws random discs everywhere. And so if it throws it at, like, you know, where your gate is, then it doesn't matter, and then it doesn't matter, and then, you know, like, by the time the enemies get to that, it could disappear, and then it completely didn't matter, at which point Bombardier is just more efficient to run. I feel like if they actively do give it talents, they're going to have to completely revamp the unit, and that in and of itself is exciting, to see if, like, they would do that, if they would just change how the unit functions. Maybe they could give it like a clock kind of thing, where they speed up your attack or they slow down your opponent's attack, because it's all about time. And I don't know, like, there's just so many interesting, being a legendary unit, the potential of possibilities is kind of endless. Like, they can make it as strong or as, you know, like, broken as they want to. And anything that is a support card that's a legendary support card, I'm always very interested in, because that is the bread and butter of all of your decks. It's support cards. It's whether or not this card is better than a Trapper, a Witch, a Banshee, you know, all of these, like, top tier support cards that are in every deck. An Enchant Sword, a Knight Statue. The reason why you're upgrading all of your support cards is so that you can slot them into specific decks. And I will always be very excited for support cards being given talents. Thunderer, I think, is kind of interesting. It has, like, the interesting mechanic of being able to hit more and more units, chaining to more and more units as it levels up. I think that mechanic is very interesting. It's like a bad Tesla. If it got talents and it became like an actual damage dealer, I think that would be more interesting than seeing it stun more things, because that's also what it does. It kind of stuns things. And I think that a Bombardier and Stasis being the stun, you know, like, units in this game, I think that's enough. Having a third one, I think, is too redundant. But if it got, like, if it switched to, like, being a damage type unit, like a bad Tesla, I think that would be cool. I think that would be a reason to use it. As it is, it doesn't do enough damage, and then in terms of stun, there are just better things to use to stun things. And that's how I feel about that. All four of these next ones, I kind of group them together. Cold Elemental, Fire Elemental, or Fire Mage, Cold Elemental, Fire Mage, Lightning Mage, Poisoner. You know what's funny is the way that they did Cold Elemental and Earth Elemental, and then started saying, like, oh, poison damage, these units do poison damage, these units are cold things, and, you know, like, we're gonna utilize slow, and Cold Elemental is gonna be the thing that damages slow things, and then Earth Elemental makes poison damage dealers more powerful, right? I feel like Fire Mage, Lightning Mage, and Poisoner, I know that Poisoner would be redundant with Earth Elemental, and I'll get to that, but I feel like that would be really cool if they gave every, like, DPS unit a subtype, and all of these things did more or you could use these as support units in the same way that a Banshee deck uses Earth Elemental as opposed to a Trapper, as opposed to a Witch, as opposed to all these other things. I think that it would be cool if they gave every DPS unit a subtype, and it made you question whether or not you should run like a Fire Elemental, a Lightning Elemental, like a Earth Elemental, a Cold Elemental. I think that it would be like really cool. And if they just like completely changed Poison Elemental, or Poisoner to something else. Like if they just like deleted the unit and then they gave you a different unit. I think that, because nobody cares about Poisoner. Nobody's using Poisoner. So if they like deleted the unit and it became like Dark Elemental, and it's something that you could run in like a Cultist deck, for example. And I feel like that would be much more interesting. These are all units that nobody really uses outside of the opening of the game. And I think that if you gave people a reason to want to invest into these things because it will eventually make your legendary decks better, I think that that's more interesting than just having like another damage dealer. Like Cold Elemental. Cold Elemental is a thing. If they had like, or not Cold Mage is a thing. If they like did away with like Cold Mage and then made a different thing like Techno Elemental, right? And it works better in technogenic decks. You put this in your engineer deck when you're starting out, and then you put it in your Tesla deck when you get a Tesla, right? I think that would be more interesting because it would give people more options for deck building later on. And I think that like, so that everybody is not just using Trapper and Witch and, Banshee, because that's what every deck is using. Part of my like frustration with the meta, and another reason why I wanted to make this tier list, is because every time they come out with new cards and new talents, it should change up the meta. Like when they gave Portal Mage talents and that started being used in a Meteor deck, like when nobody was using Portal Mage. I think that adding support cards or changing these cards to be support cards will change the meta. The meta doesn't change because you add in a Bard and a Riding Hood and a Genie. Like it doesn't change because every deck is still just using the same support cards. If you want to change the meta, you change the support cards. And then people have to choose whether or not they're running Enchant Sword or Night Statue or Trapper or Witch or Banshee or Earth Elemental or Fire Elemental or Techno Elemental or, like Dark Elemental. Like, I think that would be interesting. In order to give people like those kinds of options. Like maybe you don't have a Max Witch, maybe instead you use Dark Elemental for your for whatever, like your whatever deck, right? I think that I'm very excited about that idea. And if they come out with that idea, that pushes all of these cards into A tier. And if they don't, and they just give Fire Mage 10% more fire damage, then I'm just not going to be excited for this at all. And that's why it's lower, but still kind of high. And then my F tier, Corsair, I just don't care anymore. I don't care about another damage dealer. I'm not excited about other new damage dealers. I'm more excited in this game about support cards. I think that there are enough damage dealing things in this game to not be excited about Corsair anymore. I think Corsair has had its day in the sun. It's like quadrillion damage day in the sun, and I think it's kind of just done. Catapult, I don't even care. It's one of those things. It's another stun card, and again, I think that Bombardier and Stasis are the only stun cards that we need in this game. Shaman, I'm not excited about that. Shaman and Clock, I'm not excited about Toxic being any better than it already is. Or any more annoying than it already is. I really don't want Clock to get talents. That would really change up the meta. I think everybody would start running Clock decks. It's just like the Dark Inquisitor deck right now. But I think if Clock got talents and like, because you can't kill clock, you can't destroy clock, and it just stays on the field and gets worse and worse and worse for you as the game progresses and they level up the clocks. So you either out damage them because they're running clock instead of yet another like defense reduction support card, and you just straight up out damage them, at which point clock is useless, or clock is too good and there's no way for you to do more damage, at which point clock is too good. So clock is either not good at all because your deck will obviously out damage them, or clock is too good and it wins against everything. And I don't know how they balance this card. Ivy, Thrower, Plague Doctor, and Wind Archer, I just think they're all redundant. I think they're all just redundant cards, and there are better versions of all of these cards. Thrower is especially bad. Plague Doctor is just a bad version of Earth Elemental. Ivy is certainly a bad version of Earth Elemental, as it currently is. And then Wind Archer is just a bad, Archer. It's just a bad Boreas. And Boreas isn't good. And Wind Archer's even worse. And now Sentry's getting talents, and they're all kind of just the same singular target damage dealing unit, and it's just a lot less exciting. But that's my tier list. Let me know, in the comments, like, what you think these units could potentially get, or like what you're excited for. I don't know. I just thought that this would be fun, and something that I've never really cared about whenever they drop new talents. And like, whenever anybody asks me like what card I want to get talents, it's just Portal Keeper. I just care about Portal Keeper. That's it. But I've never really had thoughts on anything else, because it's one of those things, like, I just want the developers to give us, whatever they give us. And it's just exciting when they announce anything. When they announce Archer and Sentry, that's just exciting just as it is. I'm not in the comments being like, give us Portal Keeper talents. Give me the Santa talent. Give me the Santa talent now.